It's only working now. Colum, tell us, would you say that this case has haunted your life? Has this been your life work in a sense?
Jude, for the past 20 years now, and maybe a bit more, myself and a close friend of mine, Arthur Fagan, have been looking into the circumstances surrounding the murder of my brother. And having done so, we have learned a great deal over that period of time, not least the fact that the gang responsible for the murder of my brother also carried out at least 30 other murders within a very short period of time.
But you are convinced that these weren't simply loyalists.
No, we are firmly convinced that the people who carried this out were agents of the state, effectively.
What makes you say that?
Well, one of the people who took part and was a leading figure within that gang was someone called Albert Ginger Baker. Albert Baker had been a serving member of the SAS. He served in the Gulf with the 22nd SAS. He was also a member of the Royal Irish Rangers, stationed at Warminster. Mr. Baker says he came over here in July of 1971 as an AWOL, a deserter effectively from his regiment and from the British Army. There is evidence to show that Baker actually was here prior to that, and his family have been actually informed of the fact that he was here prior to that.
And he was directly involved, you think, in the death of your brother?
I believe he was, yes. I believe that Albert Ginger Baker, along with Edward Ned McCreary, another senior figure within this gang, the gang referred to themselves as G4, a unit of the UDA within East Belfast. They carried out what were then referred to as the Romper Room killings, along with many other killings.
Now, one person survived these Romper Room killings.
That's correct.
Could you tell us very briefly about that person?
Actually, there is a survivor, the name of whom I have given to the Ombudsman's office and so forth. This person was horrifically tortured in the UDA club by members of this gang. He was then taken and shot, and left for dead effectively. This man survived miraculously, left horrifically injured, etc., etc. As I've said, I've given his name to the Ombudsman's office and I've asked them to track this man down, not least because at this man's compensation hearing, he stated that that he may well, following the payment of his compensation, leave the 6 counties altogether, as he said himself, that he had to witness the people who had carried this out to him walking up and down the road. Those were his words.
Was he not able to identify them then to the authorities?
Quite obviously was able to identify them. My question, the question that I posed to the Ombudsman's office in 2006, possibly sometime later, but most definitely I posed to the Ombudsman's office, was that the Shankle Butchers, for instance, had not been brought to book by the great detective work of the RUC, but indeed because of a survivor being able to identify them. I asked the Ombudsman's office, why this person, this survivor, had not been put in to the back of a jeep, just as in the instance of the Shankle Butcher survivor, and driven up the Newton Ards Road to identify the people who he knew were responsible for the horrific torture that he endured and for attempting to murder him. That question has yet to be answered.
Nobody will answer that question for him.
No one, as a matter of fact, to date, I believe that no one, either within the Ombudsman's office, because my brother's investigation has yet to begin, some 9 years in, from I first approached the Ombudsman's office in 2006, that the investigation has yet to begin, and therefore,
why the delay? Why 9 years? Did you say
9 years? Yes, this is the 9th year.
What is this deliberate delay, or is it because there's so many other cases?
I think but quite literally it is very much kind of in keeping with a policy, not necessarily of the incumbent within the Ombudsman's office and so forth. I think for what it's worth, the Dr. McGuire kind of strikes me as being someone who is genuinely concerned and interested in getting to the bottom of these issues. But my circumstance was that in 2006, when I first approached the Ombudsman's office, Miss Newell Alone was then kind of the senior person. She shortly after that period left office, kind of, and then kind of she was followed by Al Hutchison. Anybody who knows the history of this place will be aware of the fact that Hutchinson, kind of deliberately dragged his feet, to say the least.
What did he say when you presented him with the case?
He, at a meeting at which two of my sons attended also, kind of, he told me in a most dismissive, off the cuff fashion that it could be 20 years before we get to your brother's case, just as a matter of fact, as I pointed out to him, kind of, at that time, I was approximately 56 or whatever, that I would be, kind of 86 if I was still above ground by the time that this investigation took place. But most importantly, and this is something that I have pointed out to all of the incumbents in that office, in the Ombudsman's office, and it's this, is that their remit is to investigate the actions of former and serving RUC men, TSNI officers, etc. Right? Given that the profile of those who were charged with investigating this matter in 1972, the murder of my brother, many of them, the lead detective, for instance, is now dead. Right, many of the others involved in that investigation will be in their dotage. Right, if this thing is left for any longer, they effectively will all be below ground, as will the perpetrators, as will any kind of witnesses to the thing, including most likely the survivor.
Do you think this is deliberate policy?
I do, very much so. Can I just show you a book? This thing here is produced by the CAJ, right? This document, kind of, I think, is essential reading for anybody who really wants to understand the situation here with regards to so-called legacy cases.
And what does it say in essence? What would you, in a sentence, what would you say is the message of that book?
The message of that book is this, I believe, kind of, that the British administration, both the present and previous administrations, have done everything within their power to ensure that there are no effective investigations into so-called legacy cases.
Why?
I don't believe for 1 minute that it's there to protect the actual individuals at the bottom of this, and by that I mean those who kind of were the people responsible for pulling the trigger. Not for 1 minute do I believe that to be the case. Rather, what I believe is this, that they protect them to ensure that those same people simply do not turn around and say, when questioned, I was actually following orders from my handler, for instance, right? Kind of, who in turn, if he appeared then in the dock, will simply say, I was following orders from my superiors. The message is that it goes right up the food chain.
And your case is only one of probably hundreds.
Absolutely, Mike. I'm more than aware of that, and importantly within my case, right. And this is something that I want to stress, right. Kind of, to anybody looking at this, and it's this, right. Kind of, the people who were responsible for murdering my brother, right, as I've said, were agents of the state. They went on not only to murder members of the Catholic nationalist population and so forth, they murdered people from within the Unionist community. They also murdered Catholic members of the UDR, right? They murdered 2 serving British soldiers who were based here in the 6 counties during that period, right? They were responsible for a large number of murders in a very short period. Many of them had went on to have careers, kind of, that have went on right to this day, and the simple fact of the matter is that kind of during that period they continued to murder and maim, kind of.
And despite the fact that there is a man who survived an attempt on his life, who could identify these people, he hasn't been asked.
He's never been asked. To my knowledge, this man, they have yet to actually track this man down. I have asked this of the Ombudsman's office on several occasions. The HET that carried out a flawed report into the murder of my brother and so forth did not even reference this person.
Where are you now in terms of your pushing for the truth of this story and the people who are responsible?
Well, I continue along with Arthur Fagan and two other friends, Seamus and John. We continue to do our best, right? Kind of to get to the bottom of these issues and so forth, right? Now, I have engaged with Kevin Winters, the law firm, kind of, and have managed to make contact with several family members of other victims and so forth, directly related to this case.
Do you think you're going to succeed?
I'm going to do absolutely everything I possibly can to bring those responsible, kind of to have the light shined upon them and so forth. But most importantly, to also the people who directed them effectively.